Welcome to the Power Lunch on LinkedIn Live, LinkedIn's new live platform. I'm Rhett Power, your host. I do this program every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and on occasion, on another day, if we get a special guest. Today at 12 noon, I've got one of my all-time favorite radio hosts, Dr. Diane Hamilton. I'll introduce her in just a second. The point of this program, everyone, is to talk to thought leaders, CEOs, corporate leaders, best-selling authors, people who are doing great things in the world and who can really help us be better and people that we can learn from. And today is no exception with Dr. Hamilton. Now, the fun part of this show is that it can be interactive. So the only way that happens, though, is if you ask questions. So, I know Dr. Hamilton and I are more than willing to answer your questions on whatever platform you ask them. If we don't get to it during the show, we'll certainly answer the questions after the show. Now, today we're broadcasting on not only LinkedIn, but Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, with the help of Social Live, which is a platform that helps us do all of that. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share. But my promise to you is always is to have a great guest. Today is no exception. Dr. Diane Hamilton is a behavioral expert, author, speaker, and radio host at Take the Lead Radio. Now, she has written 4 books. We're going to talk about one of her books today, but she's a thought leader on leadership, sales, marketing, management. Is known for really helping companies improve behavior, performance, and workplace culture. And she's author of creator of the Curiosity Index and the Curiosity Code. We'll get into all of that. Dr. Hamilton, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me here, Rhett. This is going to be fun.
It will be fun. So you've done a lot of research, and we'll get to the book and all that stuff in a minute. You've done a lot of research on improving productivity. And you talk about how curiosity is really the key to that. Can you explain that? Why is curiosity sort of, when you think of productivity, you don't necessarily think of curiosity to begin with?
You don't. And that's the problem. We need to start thinking about it. A lot of my research, it was very interesting to me to see how many things tied into curiosity. I'd like to kind of put it as in regular terms for people. Think about baking a cake, for example, okay, instead of workplace. Let's just put it that way. If you're baking a cake, you have to mix eggs, flour, oil, whatever it is you put into the ingredients. You mix it up, you put it in a pan, and you put it in the oven. And what happens? Well, if you didn't turn on the oven, nothing happens, right? And so that's kind of what's happening in the workplace. We know what the ingredients are, but the spark, the oven, is curiosity. So if you want motivation and drive, engagement, innovation, all these things that we talk about, productivity is the cake, but nobody's getting cake because nobody's turning on the oven. Right. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. How do you, what is the root of, I think we're probably more curious when we're younger, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, where do we lose? At what point do we lose that curiosity? Or does it get beat out of us or something when we in school? I don't know. How does
hopefully not literally, but yes, it does. It does tend to wane as we get into about school age. They see that we peak around, age 5. You're really at this high level of curiosity. You look at some great talks by Sir Ken Robinson. You look George Land. Some of their talks that they're out there are just really wonderful to explain about creativity and curiosity in general, what happens at that age group Ken Robinson looks at creativity, for example, and what happens there. And he says we're educated out of it because of the school systems reward math and science and certain things. And then we eventually are rewarding higher and higher levels of, higher ed degrees that focus on that type of thing rather than creativity and the things that we associate with curiosity. And George Land looked at children different age groups and he followed them throughout their lives because he did some work with NASA. And he looked at how creative and genius level they were at age 2, like 98% were just this unbelievable creativity and curiosity and levels of genius. But then they got to age 31 and it's, you know, completely tanked. So we know that there's things that are influencing curiosity, but they didn't know, no one's really studied what inhibits it. And that's what I was wanting to know, because I was looking at some of these assessments out there. I mean, we know there's the big 5 factors of personality has openness to experience, and that'll tell you your level of curiosity. And all of these great assessments from Kazdan and Lippmann, all these guys create wonderful assessments to tell you how curious you are. But that wasn't what I wanted to know. I wanted to add to what was missing in the literature. And in my mind, it was what's stopping you from being curious, because how can you move forward if you don't know what's inhibiting it?
Right. Well, what are those things that it hinders?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
You led me right to that question.
Yes, right, I did. I studied it for several years now, and I've looked at thousands of people and researched the questions to determine these things. And basically, I came up with 4 factors in all my research. And those 4 factors create the acronym of FATE, F-A-T-E. So it's fear, assumptions, which is the voice in your head, technology, and environment are the 4 main things that impact curiosity.
Technology, really?
Yeah, it was, you know, a lot of it was really interesting to me. If we can go through each of the 4 if you'd like.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, well, let's start with fear since it's fate. Okay, we'll go in order. Fear is pretty common, and I wasn't surprised by that. And actually, I started out in LinkedIn just asking people before I even did a lot of my research, you know, what keeps you from being curious? Because I was curious what people would say. Fear was just coming back all kinds of different, you know, nobody wants to look stupid. Nobody wants to be unprepared. We've all been in the meeting where you're thinking, well, I got a good question, but I don't want to ask it. So you lean next to Bob, you go, hey, Bob, why don't you ask whether, you know, and then you want, you know, it's okay, Bob looks dumb, but you don't want to say it, right?
Right.
So we know that that happens out there, right? That people are afraid to say things. A lot of it comes from leaders in the past would say things like, well, don't come to me with problems unless you have solutions. And, you know, that sounded kind of good when we first heard it, because you're thinking, well, it makes sense, you know, don't be a whiner, right?
That, yes.
Right. But then if they aren't qualified to give the solutions, then you're saying, don't come to me with any problems. I don't want to know about it. And so that's a problem. But it did sound good in your defense, anybody else's defense who did that. It made sense. You didn't want whiners that did, you know, who didn't come up with these things. But you really can't do that, because then you're limiting. You're saying, I don't want to know about problems. It's not important. So people will just shut down when you tell them things. I've had leaders say things to me like, I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Well, you know, okay, that means I'm stupid. Whoever taught me was stupid. Yeah. You don't want to know the truth. Lie to me. You know, think of all the things that does to shut down curiosity. And people like that don't really realize what they're saying. They've heard it from someone else. That's how somebody else has led them. You know, right. It's in your defense, their defense, everybody's defense who say these things.
Right.
You don't realize how much we're shutting down people in there because of just the impact that has. So fear is huge. The second thing was assumptions, and assumptions is another word for the voice in our heads, right? We know that everybody has a voice that tells them, I'm not going to like this. This is going to be too hard. I did that in the past. It was boring, you know, and you start to associate things just because you become this, you know, your perception of something is your reality just based on what you've told yourself.
Right.
And it's how long you hold on to these ideas that they become even more and more paralyzing for us. You know, if you have a fleeting thought, it goes away, no big deal. You hold on to it for a little longer and not longer, and then you're held back. And then technology, as you mentioned, is a big one, because we either under or over rely on it. And sometimes we are afraid of it. It's you know, time consuming. We just learned that. Do we have to learn it again in a new system? Or maybe we could just ask our Echo to figure it out for us. We don't know the foundation. You know, anybody who's crashed a computer and knows how to fix it has learned so much. I mean, it's the worst thing in the world to go through, but when you're done, right. You're like, oh, okay, so now that's what auto exec bat or what, all the things we had to learn in DOS originally learned.
Right.
We learned in the foundation that it's going through these motions, right?
Right.
And that was part of the problem. If you didn't go through the DOS era and the things, and you just all of a sudden have this nice Windows platform and you don't really know what's behind it. And I think a lot of people could benefit from learning more about the foundational things to understand, oh, well, if I just try this, because a lot of people are from an older generation freak out when you give them something because they're afraid they're going to break it, or they just don't understand, or they're from a younger generation who just never were taught the basics. So I think there needs to be more days of, with a lot of technology, understanding it, without it, to find out what we could do without it, just mix and match of that kind of stuff. And then environment's huge. For me, it's one of the biggest ones.
Okay.
Because that's everybody you've ever known. It's your family, your friends, your teachers, your peers, your social media. Nobody wants to post something on social media. They don't get likes, right? What do? You take it down because there's that need for approval kind of thing, to do certain things.
Right.
And when you're in a family situation where your family has always been lawyers, or they've always owned this business, or they've always done certain things, your desire to explore certain areas might have been squelched a little bit. And same thing with school. Teachers can't answer why questions all day long. If they have curriculum, they have to teach to the test. They have different things they have to do. So, it's a tough thing that we all have had it, as you said, beat out of us to some extent. But we can get it back, and we just need to recognize what's holding us back and create an action plan to move forward.
Let's say I'm a small, medium-sized enterprise. I know I've got a culture issue, maybe I've got a productivity issue. This is probably an awful question, but how do you sort of? Maybe you understand that. Maybe you're starting to realize that. How do you change it? How do you get what are some steps that they could take to sort of change that culture? And would they start with curiosity? Is that a good place to start, or what?
Well, I think you've made a very important point about recognizing that there's a problem to begin with. Sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees, right? It's just you can't, for the trees, I should say. So you can't recognize what the issue is. Sometimes it takes getting an outside consultant or an outside mentor or somebody who doesn't just say yes man, yes, isn't a yes man or yes woman to you as a leader. Now, culture starts at the top, and we've all worked for organizations where leaders just don't get it, and it's more than at the bottom,
more than the other way.
We'd like to admit. Yes, right. So we need the leaders who are listening to this to recognize that they may not even recognize that there's a problem with this. And so what I do is I train leadership consultants and HR professionals and anyone who's interested in becoming Curiosity Code Index is the name of my assessment I created. If they want to be CCI certified, then they can give the assessment to the organization. Sometimes even if they don't get certified, I can go and give it, and other CCI certified people go to these organizations, they give these assessments. And it, like an engagement survey or an emotional intelligence test or DISC or something, it opens up the dialogue for this conversation. Like, here are our issues. Here are the things we don't even know. And when I talk to organizations, I give stories and examples and different things. Disney had a problem with turnover in their laundry department. And you would think, everything at Disney's glamorous, right? But apparently it's not very glamorous to work in the laundry, okay? So as fun as that sounds. But what they did was they recognized that this is a problem. We have low engagement, high turnover. Let's ask them what we can do to make their job better, right?
Okay.
So they did that. And it seems so simple, right? But they didn't want to have to do these major overhauls. Like, they're going to, it's not a glamorous job. We're going to get back all these crazy things we can't do anything about. That's what they're thinking, right?
Right.
But instead, they got back really simple things and things that they weren't expecting, like put an air vent over my desk, my station, so I can get, some air while I'm working. Have the table adjustable so I don't hurt my back, adjust to my height. Little things like that were huge for them. Right. And once they did that, it made a big difference. So that's the kind of thing that they went out and asked questions and got feedback from the horse's mouth of how to fix things. Right. And that's what we do in the training with the curiosity. There's two parts to the training. There's the individual working on a personal, action plan to get better in terms of these 4 factors. There's actually 36 questions they take. So there's all these 36 issues that they could possibly have, and they work on those. But then another part of the training is they create a leadership proposal that goes back to leadership. Okay. That's similar to the Disney situation, where you're answering, what can we do? What can you do to help me do my job better in terms of engagement, innovation, productivity, critical thinking, decision-making, teamwork, whatever your top issues are, you're getting it from the horse's mouth like Disney did, right. But it's all tied into building curiosity to do it.
Okay. And I guess there's got to be a degree of trust in that, right? So you've got to have, in order for people to be honest with you and give you that feedback, there's, I've got a client now that I was working with, and we were out he went out to the field. He's got field offices a couple of weeks ago, and they were asking for feedback on a particular thing, and the field offices were scared to give it. The individuals, right. They wanted to do it anonymously. Right.
And I think they should do this anonymously.
Really?
I think that, I think it's really important to do it anonymously. You don't have to do it anonymously, but I would recommend it. Depends on the situation at hand. But what I would do is I would keep it confidential for especially the personal results of what their curiosity levels are. Uh-huh. The second part, the part that they bring back to leaders, I would compile it all into one report based on everybody and not name who gave what, and create an overall plan to give back to leaders and keep it anonymous.
Okay. I thought it was interesting that people wanted it to be done anonymously, because this really wasn't. It was a brainstorming sort of session, but people were. I thought it was really curious that they were scared to give their
well, they might start feeling more comfortable with address their fear issues, through this curiosity training.
Right.
In the meantime, I think it's important to keep it until you've built those foundational issues. And then if they feel comfortable, they can share it, but you give them that option.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good on the spot coaching advice right there. Uh-oh. I think we lost Dr. Hamilton.